Hi, everyone. We're just going to wait a few minutes and make sure everybody gets logged in here. Welcome. Also, please remind people this is being recorded, and I will send a link out if you're on our email list, and it will be on our YouTube channel probably in about a week or by the end of this week, hopefully, so people can watch this who were not able to join us. I'm going to go ahead and start. My name is Terry Emma. I'm the director here at the Geneva History Museum, and we're very honored here to have our guest speaker. This is the second time. I think you were here last year at the same time. I have Michael Lambert here. He is a preservation planner for the city of Geneva since January of 2013. He was also an architect in private practice for more than 30 years. He's founding chair of both the Will County Preservation Commission and the Plainfield Preservation Commission. Past member of the Illinois Historic Sites Advisory Council and member of Plainfield Historical Society and president since 2014. What doesn't this guy do? So we really thank Michael for coming to present this, as well as all of his hard work behind the scenes preparing for this presentation. I'm going to turn this over to Michael, who's here with me, and we're going to share our screen, and then there'll be a chance for you to ask questions at the end through our chat. So without further ado, here we go. Give me 1 second here. There you go.
Hello, everybody. Today, I appreciate this opportunity to share a small portion of my research on the career of John Todd Hetherington and his connection to Geneva, Illinois. Although the careers of many of his contemporaries are well documented by architectural historians, I was surprised to discover how little had been written about J.T. Hetherington, and much of what had been recorded was not accurate once multiple documents were compared. Many of you are aware that May is National Preservation Month, when we are encouraged to tell the full story of those important and underappreciated places in our communities. I wish that time allowed me to tell the full story of the career of Mr. Hetherington and the fascinating people who brought his design work to Geneva. However, after 4 years of research and our limited time today, I'm only able to share a small portion of the stories about the places they created here in Geneva. At the dawn of the 19th century, the gravel road out of Geneva and south to Batavia was dotted with a few stately farms nestled within the thick woods. Most Genevans are familiar with the names such as Cook, Atwater, and Fabian, whose country estates south of town are well known. But the early influence of two other families is less well known. Beginning in 1905, two wealthy lifelong friends, E.F. Gorton and T.S. Fauntleroy, commissioned a 46-year-old Chicago architect, John Todd Hetherington, to design 3 residences for their newly acquired country estates along the Fox River. Their elaborate residences and that of their neighbors, the Fabians, initiated the transformation of the then rural Batavia Road into the fashionable neighborhood of estate homes that line the route today. But I've already gotten ahead of myself. The story begins in Chicago with a detour to Lake Forest, Illinois, some 35 miles northeast of Geneva. It is unclear exactly when and under what circumstances Thomas Smith Fauntleroy and Edward Fisk Gorton met. However, it is likely they forged their lifelong bond of friendship as early members of the Union League Club of Chicago. Founded in 1879, the Union League Club was organized as a private social club, hotel, athletic facility, and dining hall where professional businessmen and industrialists attended lectures, relaxed, and forged business deals. The leading architects and engineers of Chicago also frequented the Union League Club, rubbing elbows with the most prominent businessmen of the era. Both Fauntleroy and Gorton joined the Union League Club in 1887. Born in 1844 at Vincennes, Indiana, T.S. Fauntleroy was raised at Nashville, Tennessee until the outbreak of the Civil War. In 1861, Fauntleroy, along with his parents and brothers, moved to Chicago. From a young age, Thomas Smith Fauntleroy was an exceptional athlete, an entrepreneur, and an organizer. With his arrival in Chicago, he got involved in athletics, and after the Civil War, he organized football and baseball teams. He was one of the civic leaders that brought the first professional baseball team to Chicago, which included A.G. Spalding. In 1862, T.S. Fauntleroy was a clerk with the Chicago banking firm of Brotherton and Nettleton, but accepted a position as teller at Chicago's Savings Bank by 1863. 2 years later, Fauntleroy was working as a teller at Scammons Bank, and by 1869 was working as a bookkeeper with Richards, Crumbaugh, and Shaw, a Chicago-based wholesale dry goods firm. Following the Great Fire in October of 1871, T.S. Fauntleroy, along with his father and brother, established Fauntleroy and Company, dealers in lumber. 4 years later, he continues as secretary of the lumber company, then operating as Long, Fauntleroy and Company. By the close of the decade, T.S. Fauntleroy, identified often as a self-made businessman, had earned his standing among Chicago's business elite. Unlike T.S. Fauntleroy's spirited rise in Chicago's social circles, Edward Fisk Gorton followed a singular path to prominence. Born in Ashtabula, Ohio, an 18-year-old E.F. Gorton came to Chicago with his parents in 1872. He earned his law degree from the Union College of Law in 1876, and immediately upon graduation, he established a law partnership, focusing primarily in real estate litigation. Within a decade, Gorton had established himself as a more than competent attorney within the Chicago legal community. Despite a decade's difference between the men's ages, the two remained close friends for nearly 40 years. Perhaps the fortune of the three subjects of my talk today would never have happened had it not been for a fourth man, W.D. Ewart. In 1874, William Dana Ewart patented a device that revolutionized the agricultural and industrial worlds. Ewart developed a small square link for the chain drives that operated farm tractors and other machinery. The metal links were made detachable, allowing drive chains to be repaired in the field, therefore avoiding costly delays due to machinery breakdowns. The metal chain device rivaled the traditional leather and woven belt drives of the era. In 1880, Ewart perfected his patent, which was soon utilized in steam shovels used for gravel mining and construction, as well as in concrete mixers, coal mining, and assembly lines. When the Ewart Manufacturing Company was founded at Chicago in 1880, T.S. Fauntleroy joined the innovative company as its secretary and eventually as its financial officer during his 25-year association with the company. As they achieved success in their careers, industrialist Fauntleroy and attorney Gorton enjoyed their increasing prosperity that stirred their interest in building residences that reflected their social status. Apparently, they forged a long-term bond with an up-and-coming Chicago architect, John Todd Hetherington. John Todd Hetherington was born August 15, 1859 at Uxbridge, Ontario, Canada, to Scottish-born parents. After his father's sudden death in 1862, J.T. Hetherington's mother returned to her native Scotland, where John was educated at Ewart Institute, a boys' secondary school. J.T. Hetherington immigrated to the United States in 1881 and settled in Chicago a short time later. Hetherington was naturalized as an American citizen in 1886. Upon his arrival at Chicago, Hetherington found employment as a draftsman with prestigious architectural firm of Treat and Foltz, where he remained for 8 years. In 1872, during the frenzied aftermath of the Great Chicago Fire, Treat and Foltz was established by Samuel Atwater Treat and Frederick L. Fritz Foltz. Treat was considered a practical engineer, while Foltz was the artistic principal. In addition to numerous public and civic buildings, Treat and Foltz were known as the architects of beautiful and modern residences for some of Chicago's wealthiest residents. S.A. Treat was a member of the Union League Club of Chicago beginning in 1885. Beginning as early as 1884, John Todd Hetherington is believed to have collaborated on the Treat and Foltz designed residence of Thomas Smith Fauntleroy and his wife, Mary Ellen Gould Robinson. Married in 1879, the Fauntleroys lived on Forest Avenue in Chicago when they engaged Treat and Foltz for the design of a new home. The new home was built at 4439 South Greenwood Avenue in the then fashionable Kenwood community, a suburb of Chicago that lay immediately north of Hyde Park. The impressive stucco and shingle residence was completed by 1886. The large residence was home to T.S. and Mary Ellen Fauntleroy and their two young children, Robert Ralston Fauntleroy, born in 1880, and Catherine Fauntleroy, born in 1883. A third child, Gorton Robinson Fauntleroy, the namesake of the Fauntleroys' close friend, was born in 1890. The Fauntleroy family lived at the Kenwood home for no more than 7 years. Although no architectural drawings or other documentation have been discovered, it is believed that Treat and Foltz also designed the Edward Fisk Gorton residence that stood next to the Fauntleroy residence at Kenwood. John Todd Hetherington likely had a role in the design of the Gorton residence, where Edward lived with his wife Fanny and their young daughter. The construction of these two residences began a 35-year tradition of the Fauntleroys and Gortons living in close proximity to one another. Incidentally, the two houses at Kenwood were demolished in the 1920s and replaced with a courtyard apartment building that stands to this day. Soon after the Fauntleroys left Kenwood, the Gorton family pulled up stakes as well between 1891 and 1894, when both families moved to Lake Forest, Illinois, nearly 40 miles to the north. Beginning in the early 1880s, Lake Forest, Illinois attracted prominent Chicago businessmen who developed country estates planned by some of the most notable architects and landscape architects of the era. Among the successful merchants of Lake Forest was Robert W. Ralston, whose wife Julia was a cousin of Mrs. Fauntleroy. Julia Gould Ralston and Mary Ellen Fauntleroy were quite close, and in fact, the Fauntleroys' firstborn son was the namesake of Mr. Ralston, who died unexpectedly in 1888. Whether it was the escalating desirability of Lake Forest or Mr. Ralston's sudden death at age 43, or a combination of factors, T.S. Fauntleroy moved his family from Kenwood to Lake Forest before 1892, possibly moving into Julia Gould Ralston's residence. Soon after their arrival, Fanny Fauntleroy gave birth to a son, Eugene Gould Fauntleroy. After the death of their only child, E.F. Gorton and his wife Fanny followed the Fauntleroys north to Lake Forest a short time later. By early 1893, it was announced that within the year, E.F. Gorton and others would be erecting elaborate residences on newly partitioned estates in Lake Forest. In spite of the financial panic of 1893, the wealthy residents pressed on with their plans to build their mansions on artistically landscaped tracts in Lake Forest. By October of 1893, a new residence for T.S. Fauntleroy was under construction at Lake Forest, as noted in The Metal Worker, a trade journal for the heating contractor industry. Sparing no expense, the new Fauntleroy home was to be outfitted with the most modern appliances and systems available at the time. It is unclear who designed the Fauntleroy and Gorton residences at Lake Forest. Their homes were completed between 1893 and 1894. It is possible the two men commissioned the Treat and Foltz architectural firm of Chicago, which had designed their Kenwood, Illinois homes. However, a most compelling reason exists to suggest that Treat and Foltz were not the architects for the neighboring Lake Forest residences. The architectural firm's most successful year had been between 1892 and 1893, when the architectural firm designed and superintended $1.5 million of work, much of it associated with the development of the Columbian Exposition. Treat and Foltz may not have had the time to devote to the Fauntleroy and Gorton projects. When the once prestigious firm dissolved in 1896, it was noted that more Chicago architects who are now honorably practicing the profession had passed through the Treat and Foltz office than through any other firm in the city. It is more likely that both Fauntleroy and Gorton selected the 34-year-old architect of their Kenwood homes, John Todd Hetherington. Hetherington had resigned from the Treat and Foltz firm around 1889, 1 year after marrying Jane Charteris Welsh of Wigtonshire, Scotland. Also in 1889, the newlyweds' first child, Grace, was born. However, she died not long afterward. Following his departure from Treat and Foltz, Hetherington formed a partnership with S.H. Warner. The new firm produced architectural plans primarily for apartment flats and small homes between 1889 and 1892. By 1892, the architectural firm was receiving more impressive commissions from some of their wealthier clientele. Based on several architectural details that seem to identify Hetherington's early commissions, for instance, the gambrel dormers on the house, it is probable that Fauntleroy commissioned Hetherington and Warner for the design of the Lake Forest residence. It is unclear whether Gorton followed suit when he began his own home a year later. Apparently, the partnership between Hetherington and Warner dissolved the following year. The young architectural firm may have been a casualty of the financial panic of 1893 and the widespread economic depression which followed. The economic depression struck the Chicago area particularly hard. Between 1893 and 1895, J.T. Hetherington continued his profession as a sole practitioner. During this partnership with Warner, 2 more children were born to J.T. and Jane Hetherington, Alec in 1890 and Murray in 1891. In spite of the dire economics, Fauntleroy and Gorton completed their residences on adjoining estates at a prominent spot along a new roadway that wound its way through the village of Lake Forest. The elaborate residences sat in the midst of neatly manicured lawns and extensive gardens beneath an established tree canopy. The idyllic setting was a significant departure from the heat and grime of industrial Chicago at the end of the 19th century. In spite of the wholesome environment, Mary Ellen Fauntleroy passed away in 1899, and T.S. Fauntleroy sold his original Lake Forest residence on Sheridan Road to Mark Morton of the Salt Magnates family. Fauntleroy moved his family to Waukegan, Illinois temporarily. In the spring of 1893, Gorton and his wife Fanny had moved to Lake Forest. It was noted in the society papers that they have a pleasant and commodious house in Lake Forest where hospitality abounds and where their many friends delight to gather. In the office, Mr. Gorton is a practical man of affairs, busy and energetic. In his home, he is a pleasant and agreeable companion. He was elected mayor of Lake Forest, and he was noted as being publicly spirited in an eminent degree, devoted to the welfare of his community and to the proposition and promotion of its best interests. Gorton served as mayor of Lake Forest from 1895 till 1902. Fauntleroy was alderman between 1897 and 1901 when he moved from Lake Forest briefly. In 1896, John Todd Hetherington entered into a new architectural partnership, Kleinpel, Borst, and Hetherington. Little has been documented about this firm, and it is unknown how long the partnership endured. George Henry Borst, born in 1848, had moved in 1884 to Chicago from England and began working as an architect, possibly in the firm of Dankmar Adler and Lewis Sullivan. In 1895, Borst entered with William E. Kleinpel, J.T. Hetherington, the following year, George H. Borst was known as the most artistic of the 3 architects between Kleinpel, Borst, and Hetherington. However, it appears that Kleinpel, who had apprenticed under architect Lewis Sullivan, also left the firm before 1899. George H. Borst continued his partnership with John Todd Hetherington. However, the 2 men may have also completed commissions independently as well. The offices of Borst and Hetherington were located in the Title and Trust Building at 100 Washington Street in downtown Chicago. The continuing partnership between George H. Borst and John Todd Hetherington proved to be both productive and lucrative through at least 1912, but possibly as late as March of 1917. Between 1900 and 1901, T.S. Fauntleroy commissioned the design for a second house along the Sheridan Road at Lake Forest. The March 8, 1902 issue of The Economist noted that 8 attractive homes are in the process of construction or in contemplation at Lake Forest. Thomas S. Fauntleroy has about completed his new house, the cost of which will be $25,000. J.T. Hetherington is the architect. The eclectic design was composed of wood frame walls with stucco and wood shingles. Fauntleroy and his 4 children remained in the second house at Lake Forest, Illinois, only until December of 1905, when T.S. Fauntleroy assumed ownership of the Moline Malleable Iron Works at St. Charles, Illinois, where the Fauntleroy family rented a home. The second Fauntleroy home at Lake Forest, Illinois was sold to E.A. Russell, who occupied the house for several decades. John Todd Hetherington's residences were an eclectic mix of traditional and varied forms reduced to clean, planar lines and surfaces favored by the modernist architects of the era. In her book, A Field Guide to American Houses, Virginia McAllister classifies houses that share similar characteristics to the Hetherington designed homes at Lake Forest and later at Geneva as eclectic houses, popular between 1890 and 1940. According to the authors, the eclectic movement began quietly in the last decades of the 19th century as fashionable European-trained architects began to design landmark period homes for wealthy clients. This early emphasis on period styles was interrupted and almost overwhelmed by the first wave of architectural modernism, which, in the form of the Craftsman and Prairie styles, dominated American homes built during the first 2 decades of the 20th century. McAllister continues, the eclectic movement draws upon the full spectrum of architectural tradition for stylistic inspiration. Unlike the free stylistic mixtures that dominated the preceding era, the eclectic movement stresses relatively pure copies of these traditions as originally built in different European countries and their New World colonies. In eclecticism, many different styles vie with one another in a sort of friendly competition within which the sharpest lines are drawn between historical or period styles and modern styles that eschew earlier precedents. A relatively small percentage of Tudor houses have only stucco exterior walls. These are most common on modest examples built before the widespread adoption of brick and stone veneering techniques in the 1920s. In the early decades of the 20th century, wood-framed houses could be most easily disguised as masonry by applying stucco cladding over the wooden studs. Many early Tudor houses use this technique, both with and without false half timbering. However, in her revised edition of A Field Guide to American Houses, Virginia McAllister further elaborates that before 1920, the least expensive way of achieving a masonry house was to apply stucco over a wood frame. Stucco over hollow tile cost far more. In addition, stucco was favored by English architect C.F.A. Voysey for cladding his early Tudor homes in the English arts and crafts tradition. His influence was felt here in the United States. After 1920, solid stucco remained the choice for those desiring a modern English home, eschewing half timbering and masonry patterns for a smooth wall appearance. Hetherington's own home incorporated his eclectic design aesthetic and streamlined surfaces, although Hetherington or his clientele seemed to have favored the use of minimal half timbering to accentuate the plain stucco walls. The restrained incorporation of half timbering and the stucco walls of the eclectic Tudor style, particularly those attributed to Chicago architect J.T. Hetherington, seem to emanate from the Scottish architectural traditions of Hetherington's youth and his architectural contemporaries of his homeland. The design of stucco-clad American Tudor homes built between 1890 and 1920 were heavily influenced by the work of arts and crafts architects in England and Scotland, including Rennie Mackintosh, which, according to many architectural historians, served as a precursor to the modern architecture movement in America. In 1905, the leading newspapers of Chicago, including the Chicago Tribune and the Inner Ocean, reported that Edward F. Gorton sold his 11-year-old Lake Forest home, noting that it was of frame construction, covered in stucco in the style of an old Pennsylvania tavern. At Geneva, J.T. Hetherington designed 3 residences that were erected between 1905 and 1907. In April of 1907, the Economist newspaper reported, "Geneva is prospering. Geneva is beginning to feel the thrill of life. It is now enjoying a boom. Geneva is one of those quiet, beautiful places on the Fox River, a little less than an hour's ride on the Chicago and Northwestern Railway. It can also be reached by the Chicago Aurora and Elgin. It is beginning to realize the influence of the addition of a small colony from Lake Forest, including the families of Edward F. Gorton, Thomas F. Fauntleroy, and Robert R. Fauntleroy, all of whom have built homes aggregating a cost of over $50,000. Mr. Gorton, it will be remembered, was year after year re-elected mayor of Lake Forest and was one of the most enterprising and conspicuous citizens of that place. He had a beautiful home which he sold some time ago, as did the Fauntleroys, and they have all now located at beautiful Geneva. Their homes are quite a fortunate addition to that place. Mr. Gorton's house has just been completed. He has about 10 acres running down to the Fox River, a distance of 1,000 feet. He has a large plaster house in the colonial style of architecture. It was recently completed after plans by architect Borston Hetherington at a cost of about $18,000. The Fauntleroys are each building English country places to cost probably $16,000 each. They will be completed in a few weeks. As a reference, $18,000 in 1907 would equate to about $3.3 million today. When the Fauntleroy and Gorton families moved from Lake Forest, they quickly immersed themselves in both the business and social circles of the Geneva community. Around 1895, a member of the local Pope family served as president of the Ewart Manufacturing Company, where T.S. Fauntleroy had served as secretary-treasurer for 25 years. Local real estate investor and banker Henry B. Fargo was a cousin of the Fauntleroy family. When the First National Bank of Geneva was organized, E.F. Gorton was named its vice president. The Gortons and Fauntleroys helped organize and were active members of the Fox River Country Club, located a short distance south of their new homes and across the Batavia Road from the Fabian Estate. Although Frank Lloyd Wright was commissioned later to design an addition to the new country club, the initial remodeling of the Italianate farmhouse in 1905 was completed for $5,000 based on an architectural design of Borston and Hetherington. E.F. Gorton was the first to acquire land along the Batavia Road, securing 10 acres with frontage along the Fox River. Gorton named his Geneva estate Foxford Farm. In short order, T.S. Fauntleroy acquired 15 acres across the Batavia Road. There he built a home for himself and his daughter Catherine, as well as a separate home for his eldest son, Robert Ralston Fauntleroy, who was assuming the management of the Moline Malleable Iron Works at St. Charles. E.F. Gorton's 1905 acquisition consisted of 10 acres of the former F.S. Crittenden farm. The former farmhouse was moved to the southeast corner of Peck Road and Hawthorne Lane, where it was remodeled so that E.F. Gorton could build his new home. Designed by J.T. Hetherington, the Gorton house at Geneva bore a strong resemblance to the first Fauntleroy house at Lake Forest. Set far off the road, the stucco-covered, wood-framed house consisted of 2 wings, casually splayed from one another to afford panoramic views of the meadowlands between the house and the Fox River. After the death of his wife in 1924, Chicago newspapers report that E.F. Gorton was spending his winters at the Virginia Hotel in Chicago and spending only the summer months at his Geneva estate along the Fox River. In a somewhat scandalous move, Gorton married his nurse, who was 40 years his junior. The house at Geneva was sold, and the couple moved to Hinsdale, Illinois, and then traveled the world. In 1929, while on a Mediterranean cruise, Edward Fisk Gorton died, and his remains were returned to Illinois for burial. Incidentally, the house was eventually sold to Ruth Renwick, who lived in the house for many years. Also set far off the road, the Hetherington designed home of T.S. Fauntleroy was shared with his daughter Catherine, who eventually married Herbert Zimmerman. Bearing hallmark design elements of J.T. Hetherington, the wood-framed and stucco-clad house incorporated only a minimal amount of half timbering as an accent to the unadorned exterior. The 15-acre country estate provided a respite for the 63-year-old Mr. Fauntleroy as he reduced his role with the Moline Malleable Iron Company. However, retirement did not set well with T.S. Fauntleroy, so in 1909, he acquired the reliable Dayton Motor Company and introduced the FAL automobile. Each initial of the new motor car represented one of the investors in the venture. By 1916, however, production of the FAL car ceased. However, the Fauntleroy family and their staff were intimately tied to the developing technology. T.S. and Robert Fauntleroy, as well as their chauffeurs, were often identified in the Geneva Republican for their reckless driving and fast speeds about town. One of the family chauffeurs invented an early car heater that warmed the interior cars of their coupes, and it was efficient and reliable. Unfortunately, however, one of the family maids was struck by a motorist and killed while walking along the Batavia Road from downtown Geneva in a rainstorm. But those are stories to be told another day. T.S. Fauntleroy died in 1921 and is buried at Oak Hill Cemetery in Geneva. Upon his death, his house was transferred to his daughter and son-in-law, Catherine and Herbert Zimmerman. Robert Ralston Fauntleroy and his first wife occupied the last of the Hetherington designed homes to be completed in Geneva. Similar to his father's house, the residence sat far off the Batavia Road. Originally, a sweeping tree-lined driveway from the Batavia Road to the main entrance and the cul-de-sac afforded only glimpses of the residence and manicured grounds as visitors approached the house by automobile. Later, as traffic increased on the Lincoln Highway, the access to the Batavia Road was eliminated and a driveway to Ray Street was installed. The front facade of the wood-framed, stucco-clad R.R. Fauntleroy home features minimal architectural details except near the main entrance. At the main entrance, the most architectural embellishments are made. There is a multi-sided stair tower and a small section above the recessed portico, which are both accentuated with half timbering. The primary entrance to the house is neatly tucked away in a small recess at the front facade. The rear of the Fauntleroy home opened to manicured lawns and gardens, as well as to tennis courts and, for many years, an in-ground swimming pool. A footpath also connected the two Fauntleroy homes. Following his divorce, R.R. Fauntleroy's wife and children occupied the house for many years. Today, these fabulous residences are largely hidden from view. However, a lone stone pillar alongside the Batavia Road identifies Foxford Lane, which memorializes E.F. Gorton's Foxford Farm, established more than a century ago. John Todd Hetherington, the architect of these impressive Geneva homes, continued his architectural practice, eventually partnering with his son and daughter. J.T. Hetherington died in 1936 from injuries sustained in an automobile accident. 3 successive generations of architects followed in J.T. Hetherington's footsteps, including his great-grandson, who is a practicing architect in Hawaii today. But that's a legacy story to be continued another day. Thank you for your participation. I would be remiss if I did not mention in appreciation the contribution of the many individuals who have made today's presentation possible. In particular, I would like to recognize the Geneva History Museum and staff, John Lars Hetherington, the great-grandson of J.T. Hetherington, the Lake Forest Lake Bluff Historical Society, Rami Lopat, Arthur Miller, Madeline Roth, Marcy J. Ward, and Laurel Hetherington Wimpfen. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to stop the screen share here. That was wonderful. Those homes are beautiful. And if anyone has any questions or anything that they'd like to put into the chat, let us know. We do these, this was the last brown bag of this season. We have a brown bag program like this every month on the second Tuesday, September through May. We skip December and January, but we'll start up a new season again in September. So if you're not on our email list, let us know. From John Hetherington, applause, applause, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very nice, you're welcome. And if you're ever in town, please come visit the Geneva History Museum. We do hope to open here in hopefully July. Stay tuned for more announcements if things keep going well here. And we'll share all the fun things that we've been doing during closure and all the improvements we're making so that we can continue to tell these wonderful stories about people who have made Geneva what it is today. Thank you all. We look forward to seeing you all again. And again, if you're not on our email list and to get these program announcements, please sign up either on our website, you can create an account, or give us a call and we'll help you out. From Laurel Hetherington, Wimpton, many thanks, Laurel Hetherington, thank you. What an honor to have family members join us today, and that's all because of Michael's outreach and their assistance with the program and the information. And just so you know too, all of this information will be held here at the museum in our archives so that it won't be lost for future generations. And that's what we're all about here, is preserving Geneva's story. So thank you all. Have a great day. Please come join us again. We hope to present more programs virtually. We spent many a summer dinner at the Mill Race Inn, from John Hetherington. Yes, we sure miss the Mill Race. We hope something comes in its place soon. But Geneva now is such a mecca of restaurants. It's like when I grew up here, there were only just 2 restaurants or 3 to go to. Now I think there's like 40 some to go to. It's crazy. Tinka's Toy Shop, yes, it was one of my favorite toy shops too. John Hetherington's letting us know Tinka's. And Henry's Dime Store was always great in the lower level. What a pleasure and honor it has been to have all of you with us. And again, please stop and see us sometime soon. We are making improvements and adding to the gallery. We've put in new shelving downstairs to help preserve all of these wonderful things we have here. And we thank you for all of your support. May is membership month. If you're not a member yet, or you need to renew, please do so in May, because we've already reached over $13,000 in support just this month. And we could certainly use more of your support, and we'd love you to be a member, help support what we're doing with a donation. And if you do that in the month of May, you get entered to win a $100 gift card, which can be used for anything here at the museum, the gift shop, programs, research, you name it. We're getting back, and thank you all for being here, and we'll sign off and see you all soon. Bye-bye.